fairly deep into round 2 now, and draws don't come too much better than this. I guess you could say two stalwarts from either side of the fence. Neil Raybone, very much known for his black ball tendencies, playing on the IPA, and I think he used to be EP at one point, wasn't he? And transitioned across.
He was on the IPA to when it was World Rules before.
Yeah.
They split up.
And of course, Matt has been playing on the World Rules, various tours for a number of years, and a regular at all of the big events. I think the first time I saw him would have been in the elite competition at Savannah, probably 5 years ago, and been watching him fairly steadily since. He's often there and thereabouts. Probably doesn't have the list of accolades of some other players, but he's a very dangerous player, isn't he?
Yeah, over the last few years, I mean, he's a nice guy and has always been a sort of popular figure at these tours. I think he's the kind of guy everyone roots for to do well. But like the last couple of years, or maybe more than that now, has established himself as a really dangerous force. As you say, like he's not necessarily one of the big names you immediately think of, but actually, if you look through some of the people he's beaten everyone good.
And yeah, you mentioned definitely one of the nice guys of the game. Always stops and says hello. In fact, grabbed me as I walked past earlier, and we had a brief exchange. Not seen many of these players for probably, well, none of us have we really, for probably 18 months. And
no, it's a double whammy today. You've got to remember who everyone is, having not seen them in ages, and then lots of people wearing face masks as well. Adds to the guessing game.
That's the worst for me. I have a number of people saying, "All right, Nick, how you doing?" And I'm looking at them through a face mask and thinking, I don't have a clue who you are.
Yeah, tried and trusted. All right, mate, how's it going?
You've only got the eyes to look at, and you're just like, all right, yeah, all right.
It's nice to see the unification of a few different groups of players. Like Neil Raybone used to be part of what was the precursor to this tour. He's been away for a few years playing other things. It's nice to see a few familiar faces back, all in the same competition.
Isn't it ever? Gaz Hibbert playing in this event as well, and Gaz obviously was world champion at Black Ball.
Yeah, Gaz is another one that I remember playing him. He was one of the first matches I ever played on the IPA tour years and years ago. Another really nice guy, really solid player. I mean, back then he was a really solid player, but I guess probably transitioning over from snooker in those days didn't have quite the poor CV, but he's certainly gone on to create one in the last few years. Unwelcome kiss there on the yellows. He was screwing back. Now we're going to have to try and knock that yellow out, either play one off the other one or cannon into it.
Talking about Gaz Hibbert, I mean, I've seen him in the venue because I was just looking at him a second ago, but I haven't seen his name on the scoreboard yet, so I don't know. I must have just missed it. I'm sure he's played at some point, otherwise he wouldn't have been here. Well, Declan Brennan's now played. He played Joe Nolte and won that one 7-5. So he gets himself through the second round. Who else in action at the moment? Clint Jansen. Well, he's playing Carl Morris. That should be a cracking game. Carl never fails to surprise me how good he is every time I see him.
Yeah, that's another face from the past, isn't it? Lovely to see him back in the game.
Whenever I see him, you just kind of think back to Carl Morris of best part of 20 years ago, and you just think he won't have it like he used to. And then you see him play and you think he really does.
Yeah, it's actually quite rare when people come back. Like most sports are listed with people who've made comeback years later on, and they're just never quite the player they were. But actually, he's looked really good the times I've seen him recently.
And another regular face at any comp around the country, Arfin Dad, he's currently playing. And he's winning 4-0 against Craig Ball.
Yeah, he's a very good player and he's accomplished it. Played with him in a number of 9-ball tours, 8-ball tours. He seems to just turn his hand to whatever's in front of him.
Hibbert's playing now. That's why I haven't seen his name up to this point. He's just about to get underway on table 18. So.
Slightly shorter journey for Gaz than it was for us. He hails from a slightly more local area. So Neil Raybone used the 2 visits to clear up in the first frame. Now gets us underway in frame 2. First glance, that's a pretty good break, although a little bit of a complication around the black in the top left-hand corner as we currently look at the table. Spotted a red, and you can see a path for all of the reds apart from the one nearest the black, so he'll just be eyeing up whether that does go past the black or not.
Other notables that have found their way through to the 3rd round. Adam Davis, he was through against Christopher O'Hare 7-5. Steve Petty 7-4 against Steve Oxley. So he's also through. Sean Story managed to navigate that game with Gaz Royds. They were 5 each, and Sean Story ended up winning 7-5. Dylan Leary is currently trailing Richard Chapman. Kevin Seward is 6-4 up against Liam Leach, so he's on the hill. And he came and saw us earlier, actually, and just gave us a tap on the shoulder and said hello. And he said he's not really played for a couple of years, so he'll be happy with the way he started this tournament. And Enrico Forgione knocked out Carl Sutton, 7 frames to 4.
Yeah, I think you have to say that's quite a big surprise.
Tom Cousins, having trailed Dan Chanter, he ended up winning that one 7-5. Harjeet Singh won the Battle of the Singers with knocking aside Daniel Singh 7-0. John McAllister safely through to the 3rd round, 7-5 against Alex Bailey. Dom Cooney, we saw him slap the table earlier on. That's because he actually went out against Wade Morley 7 frames to 3. And kind of gets us up to date with what's happened so far. We'll focus back on what's happening right now, and a bit of an error there from Neil, who's just trying to cover the pocket. Overhit it slightly and left himself nothing.
Yeah, really didn't want that ball going in.
To be honest, it wasn't doing that much for him, even if he covered the bag, because where he'd left the cue ball, it left the opportunity for Matt to pop the only red that ball was covering the pocket. So that he didn't have a lot of options open to him, to be honest. So
no, and he's actually made a pretty decent fist of it. I think Matt may be able to squeeze a red off the cushion and off the yellow and open this pocket up bottom left. But Neil did what he could from that. Well, that was a pretty advanced shot there. You had to get the white in exactly the right position. Always the risk of the red coming around and hitting it again. I mean, he's not immediately left any danger, but allowing his opponent back to the table to try and tidy the yellows up. Encouraging to see such a full draw at this event. I was thinking, given the slightly last-minute nature of it and the fact that a lot of the rules had changed, that there might be a lot of no-shows, but actually it seems really pretty full. I've seen almost nobody not show up.
I did notice that Lee Kendall was a forfeit. I thought he would have done what's going on there, but I would have thought he would have come up for the weekend. Expected to see him.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully everything's okay with him.
Yeah, he's been putting in a lot of work during lockdown, laying on events.
Mm.
In a way, the lockdown acted as a bit of a break. A couple of competitions were kind of maybe coming to their natural end, and then different people have taken over it. So in a way, it's breathed a bit of new life into the sport.
It's becoming more open for Neil. Obviously, still got that one problem ball, but equally Matt has got the red. And now, well, a little careless. Neil just pretty much laying down the gauntlet and saying, I don't think you're going to clear, but at the same time, that double kiss has not helped his cause. Left the yellow in trouble. Matt looking closely to see whether that red will squeeze past the black. It's one of those that I think it probably will.
Yeah, I think it's helped the fact that black isn't tight on the cushion. I don't know if you could squeeze it in. Maybe tough to pot it, but I think you could probably squeeze it round the black at least. In a way, the most difficult shot of this clearance may well be this first one. To take a long shot on.
I think he's playing a dangerous game there.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised he did that. I mean, I suppose you can look at it and say there's no immediate danger, but it would only take Neil to conjure up one moment of magic to turn things around. Well, that was very nearly the moment that he needed. See, he'd have been plumb on the other yellow, so if that ball had gone in, it would all have been over.
And as it is, the yellow is going to cause a big headache for Matt. May be able to move it out of the way with one of the other yellows, but at the moment he's just looking at trying to squeeze that. I think he's just going to take control of this pocket. As you mentioned, just squeeze it past and...
Yeah, as it turns out, it was quite a good thing that it didn't fly in too cleanly.
Yeah.
He was able to hit it pretty firmly, knowing it was very unlikely to drop. The priority was just to get it past the black. So the frame's still in the balance. The two problem areas, the yellow bottom right is blocking Matt clearing up, and the position of the black is blocking Neil clearing up.
Just wonder here whether there's any value in a deliberate foul in knocking the black out, potting the red at the same time, and leaving the cue ball at this end of the table and just saying to Matt, I don't fancy you with the yellow where it is. I don't fancy you to clear the table.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And if you're going to do it, you better just bite the bullet and get it done early on. Well, he's going to go the other way and play the yellow onto the red. That's a slightly safer way of doing it, I guess, because it blocks the pocket.
Yeah.
The only downside to playing it this way is that he's not going to be able to get a tight cue ball. He's a bit limited. He can't afford to hit this too hard, so he's really just going to have to roll it in, and the white's naturally going to go over to the right-hand side.
That's not worked.
No, I think it was maybe being a little bit greedy there, trying to get a position as well. I think if he'd have focused on just dropping the yellow absolutely dead weight and blocking the pocket. I mean, we'll never know whether that would have been good enough, but he's left Matt a much easier starter than he should have had.
I did mention earlier whether Matt could move this yellow. I think he can pop one of these reds below it.
Yeah, even if he plays off the cushion and then off the yellow.
Yeah. And even though he couldn't pot it, it just doesn't matter. He's got the second visit, so. The key for Neil there was always, as you mentioned, the priority was to keep the yellow over the pocket, and as you said, just being a bit greedy there, trying to get the cue ball across the left-hand side of the table.
Yeah, because it was in a good place to get the pocket really well covered, because the red was so deep in. If you just dropped it in dead weight, that yellow would have just stayed there. It was only the pace that caused it to bounce back. And you can see from that overhead shot, the black does go past the yellow, so nothing really for Matt to do here. Gonna have a big target off the last red, just get the white somewhere up towards the baulk cushion. So a frame that could have gone either way, but Matt Brierly takes it. The level's up at 1 frame apiece. It's a real difference having such a quality draw. It used to be when we do streamed games on a Friday night, they tended to be pretty one-sided, because in the early rounds there'd be one good player who was just making their way through, and it was almost a formality. Whereas tonight, match after match, you've been thinking, well, this could be a quarter-final, semi-final.
Clint Hansen is now 2-0 up against Carl Morris. Ryan Bodsworth 3-0 against Glenn Whitemore. Arfin Dadnos 6-0 against Craig Ball. Jake Dylan Newlove is 5-0 against David Stock. Gaz Hibbett is playing Jasper Simmons. They're currently 1 frame each.
Meanwhile, pretty solid break from Matt. He's got one of each colour down, so got the option. Yellow's his choice, and as you can see, it all pretty straightforward, you would imagine. Could be happy with this after a bit of messing around in the last frame. He'll have taken the confidence of winning it. I'd like to follow that up with a quick one here. Just got to mind his work, not really much difficulty in the only marginally difficult positional shot, although not really, will be coming back for the black, but it's a pretty big area to aim for. All the work really done with the break here. Fairly straightforward position on either colour from where the ball's rested. Don't really need to get too close to the black. This is the kind of shot you can sometimes get greedy and bring a red into play when you don't need to. Position the blacks in, he can be sure of leaving himself some kind of shot if he doesn't try and get too close to it.
Oh dear. Ooh, well, he's managed to get away with that one.
Yeah, he's a lucky boy if he can still pot the black, because that was totally the wrong cannon on the red. If he was cannoning that red, he needed to hit it full, not slide off the back of it. well. You could see how much he decelerated. That was a very tentative way of playing that shot.
He was worried. I mean, he'd already looked at the contact point with the red. He could see that if he makes any kind of pacey contact with the red that he did cannon into, it could go in off into the. And of course, in Blackpool rules, that's not a concern. But in these rules, it would be a foul and essentially loss of frame there. But and I think that's ultimately what's cost him. He was just worried about the contact with the red, and as you say, decelerated on it, played it very softly, and it's cost him the pot.
Yeah, and it's the point we were talking about earlier. He just slipped out of position a couple of shots ago, and it was just getting slightly worse with the last two shots. So Neil's had 2 goes now, cannoning into the red on the right-hand side. He's missed it both times.
Got the perfect angle to do it again there.
Yeah, 3rd time lucky. He's got a good angle to do it again, and it's also in quite a good position, because if he hits it fairly full, he's sure of having a shot on the one in the left middle.
3 attempts. I think sooner or later he's just going to hit a double.
Yeah, sooner, I think. If there's one silver lining, he's knocked it into a pretty straightforward double.
Yeah. Nice and simple.
So definitely a frame that Matt Brierly gave away. He was in control and was on the black first, but decelerated on the black and left it in the jaws of the pocket from where Neil Raybone is about to pot it. Not an entirely convincing performance there from either player, but Neil will be happy to take that one. The frame before he could have won, but that got away from him. Reversal that time round. Neil Raybone now leads by 2 frames to 1.
Adam Basu leading Rob Warren 3-2. He was 3-1 up. Gareth Hibbett's won the next frame against Jasper Simmons and now leads 2-1. Christy Coldfield, who is on the table just adjacent to where we are now, table 3. He's beating Ben Smith 3-2. A couple of tough opening games for Christy. He opened his account with a match against Jamie Graham, who's always going to be a tough opponent. The Irishman navigating his way through the field so far. Neil gets us underway in frame number 4. Pots are yellow, but it's not going to be going yellows. Red will be the choice. Much more favourable in this layout.
Yeah, and that tells us that the red to the left of the cue ball pot, so actually fairly straightforward. It looked quite a congested table after the break, but that one shot happened to have a shot through to open it up and drop on the difficult ball. A lot of pool coming up tomorrow. Got the latter stages, of course, of this tournament. First and second rounds played tonight. Playing down to, I think, a final tomorrow. Final tomorrow night.
Yes. Yeah, final is scheduled for 10:30 tomorrow evening.
So Neil Raybone making fairly easy work of this.
Yeah, quarter-final scheduled for 6:30 tomorrow, the semi-final at 8 and the final around about 10:30, so...
Yeah, that was an initiative we moved to a few years ago, of playing the final on the Saturday night. We used to play it on a Sunday afternoon, which was always a bit painful because the most important match of the weekend would be being played where all the tables were being cleared away.
Yeah, and everyone's gone home.
Yeah, a number of times I'd commentated on the final, and then you'd step out the commentary box, and there'd be about 4 people there cheering the winner on, and it felt a bit wrong. Whereas on a Saturday night, you get a nice crowd. Cause, well, you normally do. I'm not sure what the rules are. I think the capacity limits in all the rooms, so a smaller but socially distanced crowd for tomorrow night.
Wow. Crunch.
Yeah, we've seen a few different styles. That's definitely going for the power approach. Although it's not going to, well, so he's not going to love the outcome. I suppose the Reds are okay.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be too disappointed. It's Reds are a little awkward. I mean, they could be easier, but they're all there compared to the yellows. And I mean, even if he does run into trouble, the yellows are pretty horrible. So you kind of got that little safety net, which often gives you the confidence to go on and clear the frame anyway.
Yeah, no 2 breaks are ever the same. You look at it, you wonder how on earth you'd ever get 4 yellows lined up like that.
I think he can hold here. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good shot. He had to play that slow, otherwise if he'd have slipped behind those yellows and not left himself a shot on the one on the bottom cushion, it would have made the position tricky.
Yeah, he's got some real power through that break, and as you can see, he's only a slight fellow, but he generates some real power, and we see that from players like Liam White. He's only a little guy, but my goodness, he absolutely crunches the break.
Yeah, it just shows it's about the speed of the cue action, not purely the power. And actually, the shot before that, the one he played to get the cue ball back into the middle of the table, he didn't have much angle. He had to really get through it.
Just the wrong angle here, so I mean, you could make an argument for taking the one at the rail now, which is exactly what he's looking at. So he's looking at, it's going to be much easier to play that now rather than try and navigate the one to the left and then come off the top cushion, which is fraught with danger trying to get position, and then infinitely more difficult to try and get on the black as well. So this a much better option.
Yeah, it's not an unmissable pot, but it's an unmissable position as long as it goes in. So you've just got to focus on the pot. It's a natural tendency to push these to the cushion. If you're going to miss them, you tend to brush them off the right cushion. So you just need to keep the ball straight on line for the pocket.
Wow. You can only really say a bit of a howler.
Yeah, I mean, you can't blame him for being positive. I suppose in a way it was better to play it at that pace if you were sure of it, but I think I'd have been playing it slower than that. That didn't feel the optimum way of getting it in.
I think the issue for him was that it was just a little bit between. If he played it at the optimum pace, he probably wasn't going to land on the red because the cue ball was going to be over to the left-hand side, and that red, it's not like you could leave it on the side cushion and pot it bottom right because it doesn't go. So he had to get on and off the cushion, but even then, that pace was really too much to be able to do that, and it's cost him the. No, it's going to cost him the frame. I mentioned about having that safety net because the balls are difficult, but of course that doesn't help too much when you give away two visits. So
No, I mean, of all the things you could have imagined there, going in off, I wouldn't imagine it wasn't something I was seeing as a major danger. I wouldn't imagine it crossed his mind that much.
No.
That's the trouble, though. If you miss something by a long way, anything is possible.
That's a good opener from Neil. Potting it means that he carries his second visit, and now he's left a lovely angle to. He can. I think ideally he'd like to go 2 cushions and come into the back of the yellows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like so. How's your luck? Well, I think he's okay. He's a little bit close to his work, but if the yellow that he's closest to passes to bottom right, I think he's fine. I mean, again, probably making a drama where there isn't one because he has a second visit anyway to rely on, so let's see. Even if he can't make a ball, he can definitely set them up.
Yeah, that was the advantage of potting that first one, as you were saying, down the right-hand side cushion. Keeping the visit in hand just gave him that extra safety net. As we always say with these, if you're not sure you've got a pot on, you better just concentrate on setting it up. No prizes for not using the second visit. He was able to pot it though. So, good opportunity to open up a 4-1 lead, which takes him over halfway towards the winning margin.
Just looking at how the draw pans out, I noticed that Wade Morley, having beaten 2019 world finalist Dom Cooney, his reward for that is to play the 2019 world champion John McAllister.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier, does it?
No.
The world champion, a different code, of course. It was Mick Hill that beat Dom Cooney in the World Rules World Championship final. John McAllister winning the black ball final.
Did John McAllister play in that final? Just trying to remember. Can't recall. Sure, someone's on the chat box shouting the answer. Was it? I mean, Marsh lost one, but it wasn't. It'll come to me in a minute.
Right, we're here all weekend. You've got plenty of time to come up with a trivia. So, having watched his opponent go for a crunch power break, Neil Raybone trying the same approach. There's a bit of chat going on in the commentary box about who John McAllister beat in that final. We'll come up with the answer sooner rather than later.
I'm just going to look in. I'm just going to look on the YouTube chat because someone will be shouting the answer on there.
Probably going to get told that John McAllister didn't win it, or we're thinking completely the wrong.
Yeah. Oh, Lee Anderson. There you go. Paul got it right. It was Aaron Davis, and Paul said it was Aaron Davis. To be fair, I was doubting him. And Carl Newton asking if we know who's on next. We do know who's on next. I'm talking about Davis's is the other one. The one who did win a world championship, Adam Davis. He's going to be playing Alex Lewis. That's next up. Due to start 9 o'clock. Probably won't be far off if Neil carries on the way he is.
Full 10 years ago, Adam Davis won that title. Very hard to believe. And how things have changed in that time. That 2011 final was the first one that we streamed live. It used to be that they were pre-recorded and shown on Sky afterwards, which was good in some ways, but obviously ruined the suspense a bit because most of the pool fraternity knew who had won it.
Yeah.
That was the first year the final was live. as we started to say earlier, full day of pool tomorrow, so we've got the rest of this competition playing to a final around 10:30 tomorrow night. We've also got the Open tournament, so effectively a second chance for everyone in the main draw. And then this year, very high quality ladies tournament being played in parallel.
Yeah, I bumped into some of the ladies, and as you say, definitely high quality.
Yeah, and that's something that's really changed in the last few years. We've seen it with the 9-ball as well in some of the recent matchroom events. Some of the female players have done very well. It's been a nice initiative having everyone play together in the same draw rather than having them as separate competitions. It showed how level the playing field can be in certain circumstances.
Neil Toms, the organiser of this event, he's still in the draw. He's through into round 3, and he's going to play the pigeon, Chris Patient. That one's due up at 9 o'clock, so it'll be interesting to see who progresses through that one. Neil was telling me yesterday that he practiced the cue ball very close to being kicked in, and the last ball rolling finds its way into the pocket. Yeah, Neil was telling me last week that he actually practices with Chris Patient, and Chris just doesn't beat him. Apparently, Neil said that he often gave him a 4 start and then still won. And then Chris said, "No," he said, the start's messing with my head. Let's just play off scratch." And then Neil still beats him. So he's definitely got the psychological edge in that game. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out of that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I've seen something on Facebook, a live of them playing a practice match, I guess it must have been.
Yeah.
It's always a funny dynamic when you play people you know. It doesn't always go the way you expect it to. All credit to Neil Toms, both for the quality of the event that he's put on, and also playing in your own event is actually not a straightforward thing to do. There's so many people asking him questions about the event. To focus on his own game can't be easy.
I don't know how he does it. I mean, yesterday he was just going around organising everything, and his phone never stopped buzzing. He said, "I put my phone down for half an hour and picked it up, and I just got a long list of messages with people asking, what's the dress code, and what time am I on, and what table do I go to, and I can't get in my hotel room." It's just absolute torture. I mean, it's at the best of times, trying to organise pool players is like herding chickens. But yeah, I feel for Neil.
Yeah, it's the ultimate thankless job. And I mean, and the conditions as well at the moment, when event 1 had to be cancelled, this was originally going to be event 2, could so easily been cancelled because of the COVID restrictions. To battle on doing all that work when you're not sure if it's even going to go ahead. And all running very smoothly so far, it has to be said. And this is a somewhat new venture. A lot of the team from previous tours, but still in a new format and a new venue. All looking pretty smooth so far. The other thing that's looking pretty smooth is Neil Raybone's progress through the last few frames. 5 on the board of the 7 he needs. May not be long before he has number 6.
Yeah, just quietly going about his work, as Neil very often does. He's one of those players that just sneaks up on you. I mean, we forget, I think, sometimes how good Neil really is. There's so many times where if you put up a Facebook poll to say who are your top 5 players or even top 10 players, there's very, very few people that would name Neil in there, which is a bizarre thing because he held the number 1 spot on the IPA for a couple of years running, and he really is at the very top of the game. And I just, as I say, it's not a name, people just come out with Hill, Cousins, Farnsworth, Dunster, and all these other names, and very rarely mention.
Yeah, I agree, and it's not been a flash in the pan either. I mean, he's been this good for 10 plus years. He's been constantly doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it always baffles me when people write down their top 5 and they don't have Phil Harrison in it. To be honest, it's just, I mean, he's in my top 2, so.
Yeah, I agree. I think because he makes the game look so easy that there's a temptation to you somehow convince yourself he's just always got an easy finish, but it's him. He's making it easy. It's not that they always fall like that.
That's a really good way of putting it. Actually, it's yeah. You just forget what he's achieved, and let's be honest. If it hadn't been for Mick, then Phil would have won double the amount of world championships, no doubt. I mean, you only got to see how many tour events he's won. You know, one year there was 5 tour events, and I think he won 3 of them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, all those events he was playing so much pool because there's a couple of different tournaments at each event. He was playing in the Premier League, and he was basically just playing the whole weekend non-stop and to the same standard in each match. I mean, 1 world title for how good he is doesn't seem much of a return, although in a way, the one is the one that matters, I guess. That's once you're world champion.
Yeah, no one's ever taken that away.
And another one, I mean, that was 2009. He won that world title. He's been knocking on the door, and he's been in some more finals since then.
Yeah.
I remember one year he was playing Mikel. I think they were even sharing a room at the hotel, so good friends off the table. But
yeah. And then, I mean, you look at the event that kicked off with Lee Kendall, the Supreme Series, won 2 of those events against, you know, arguably the toughest field that had been assembled, because it was the very best. It was everyone under one umbrella. It was the best of the IPA, the best of the EPA, and they pulled them all together, and there they were in Stoke-on-Trent, and he won 2 of those events. I think he lost another semi-final. And I mean, people mentioned Mick Hill and said, how he underachieved in that. Well, he made a final and 2 semi-finals, I think. It's like,
yeah, I mean, against that field, like what are people expecting, really? As you say, absolutely stacked. It was like round 1 draw could have been the final of any other event.
Yeah.
I mean, that's on the subject of Phil Harrison, shows how good he is. I think there's perhaps a perception that what he's good at is beating less good players, which he is very good at, but he does beat the big boys as well. He's come unstuck against people like Mick in a few big matches, but I mean, he's beaten him as well in plenty of others.
Yeah. And of course, they famously met in a final of the Supreme Series, and Phil was the victor of that one. So I think he'll, in that field, I mean, okay, it wasn't a world title, but I think he'll pretty much feel that it was up there amongst the best.
It could have been a world title, couldn't it? The quality of that field. I think it might have been a different outcome in the World Championships had it always been played on a 7-foot table. Up until the last couple of years, played the televised stages on an 8-foot table, which I think was probably giving a slight edge to people like Mick, who are naturally slightly more flamboyant potters. I think had Phil been playing on the same table, he'd probably been more of a favourite than he was for quite a few of those matches.
Someone was asking the challenge event tomorrow, is that restricted to first round losers, second round losers, or is it an open event?
No, it's an open event. It's everyone back in.
It is everyone. Yeah. I thought as much.
Yeah, it's not some tournaments do it as a kind of plate for the people that have got knocked out, but it's pre-drawn. It was drawn at the same time as this one was, so everybody knows they're playing. I think it's the whole field this year. Last year there was a Premier League which took out the top players, but I don't think it's split up like that. That's a very tough tournament because playing best of 7s at this standard, you go a frame or 2 behind. You don't necessarily have to do anything wrong. You can almost go the entire match without having a shot if you have a couple of dry breaks.
Well, that's not come out at all well.
No, he got off to a good start in this match, did Matt, but it feels like we haven't seen too much of him at the table for the last few frames, and that shot isn't helping. JJ4 in the background that we were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah. And I fear that could be the last shot that Matt plays.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been a 7-1 match, but you would have to say Neil's been the better player from what we've seen.
Yeah.
We've certainly seen a lot more of him.
Oh, well, sorry, Neil. Put the curse on.
Yeah, it's been a while since I put the commentator's curse on anyone. We've had a bit of a layoff. Got to get started again.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
That was a surprising miss, really. That wasn't having to do a lot. It wasn't like he needed a forced position. I'm not sure that will ultimately change anything in the match because he's so far ahead, but he'd much rather have got this wrapped up 7-1 and get back to his hotel room rather than getting his opponent back into it.
Someone mentioned Odie Bell's name, and funny enough, I was looking for him in the draw earlier on and couldn't find him, and that's because he hasn't actually played yet. He had a bye in the first round, and he's playing Gary Southern in the 9 o'clock group. So another Oli's club Bullet Bar, which he's opened recently, well, right there in the middle of lockdown actually, unfortunately for him, is about half a mile from my house. So my first foray back into playing pool last Saturday was at his club. He's done a great job actually. Really nice little club down there in Yeovil.
Yeah, it's so tough for anybody running a club or hospitality venue at the moment, let alone opening a new one. But it does feel like there's a lot of pent-up demand. I think we all want to get back to our normal lives as soon as we can, so hopefully he'll get some good custom.
And Matt just not quite at the races here. He's fallen out of position again and really only left himself a pretty horrible double.
Yeah, it'd have been better overrunning than underrunning that.
Yeah.
I think at least with the double he can hold position. It's not an easy angle to pick out, but it's a sort of fairly straight double. He's not going to fly around the table at least.
And that really should be the last part he plays in this event.
Yeah, I mean the damage was done earlier in the match, but that was a last-minute lifeline that could potentially have got him back into it. Bar the miss that led to that visit, Neil Raybone's been pretty solid so far, so hard to imagine where a miss would come from.
Just briefly going back to Early Bell, I was watching something the other day in the Monday night pool that they're currently playing. Is they ask the players to do a break and dish, like not a break and dish, but to clear the table in the quickest amount of time. And I think the record at the moment is, I don't know, 49 seconds or something. Might be Josh Kane. And I looked down through the list. I mean, Oli Bell is known to be a quick player. And I noticed that Oli's name was right at the bottom with 1 minute, I think like 1 minute 24 against it. And I thought, well, that's a bit unusual for Oli. And then I tracked across and noticed that it says in brackets, one-handed.
Yeah, probably. I saw exactly the same thing. Yeah, I had the same reaction as you. I was thinking, oh, that competition's made for him. Like, how's he not higher up? That's long been his party trick, hasn't it?
Yeah,
he's often challenging people one-handed.
It's obscene. It really is. I mean, I've mentioned it many times on commentary before. If you've never seen it, you really should. There's a couple of videos on YouTube of him doing it. It's just ridiculous. In fact, they got him up playing Phil Taylor in that event. I think they got him all the way up just to do a bit of one-handed stuff, and he is. I mean, it's not the fact that he plays one-handed; it's the fact that he holds the cue like a dart, basically. Anyway, digressing again as Neil tidies up the last couple of balls, and it's Neil that will progress through into round 3. Matt drops away. We'll see him again in the Challenge Tour tomorrow. But it's farewell to him for now. and it's going to be farewell from us for 20 minutes or so. We're due back on at 9 o'clock, and I already mentioned to you who's in action, but it's going to be Adam Davis against Alex Lewis. That should be a really good game. There's a couple of very good players there. So we shall see you in 20 minutes or so.